The champagne flute shattered against the marble floor of the Metropolitan Museum's Grand Hall, and I watched my sister's face drain of color as security escorted her out in handcuffs. Her Valentino gown, the one she'd stolen from my closet 3 hours earlier, trailed behind her like a funeral shroud. I adjusted my own custom Dior and took another canapé from a passing waiter, savoring both the smoked salmon and the exquisite irony of the moment. "I'm so sorry for the disturbance," I said sweetly to the museum director who was frantically apologizing to the other gala attendees. "My sister has issues with boundaries, and apparently with understanding that forged charity donation receipts are federal crimes. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this really began, or rather, where it ended the first time. In my first life, I died on my 28th birthday. Not peacefully in my sleep, not in some tragic accident, but choking on my own vomit in a studio apartment I could barely afford, with my phone dead because I couldn't pay the bill, wearing pajamas I'd owned since college because I had nothing else. The official cause of death was acute alcohol poisoning, but the real cause was 10 years of systematic destruction at the hands of my own family. My name is Vivian Chen. In my first life, I was the eldest daughter of Jonathan and Patricia Chen, owners of Chen and Associates, a boutique investment firm in Manhattan. I had one younger sister, Melissa, born exactly 2 years and 3 days after me. We should have been equals. We should have been allies. Instead, Melissa became my murderer. Not directly. She never had to get her hands that dirty. She just had to take and take and take, until there was nothing left of me but an empty husk that finally gave up. It has started small, a borrowed dress that came back with wine stains, my homework copied without permission, my first boyfriend whom she seduced at my 16th birthday party while I was downstairs cutting the cake. Each time our parents laughed it off. "Sisters share," my mother would say. "Don't be so selfish, Vivian." But it was my designer bags that became the symbol of everything she stole from me. I got my first authentic designer bag at 18, a vintage Chanel 255 that my grandmother, my father's mother, had given me before she passed away. It was the last gift she ever gave anyone, purchased with her own money from her own account with a card that read, "For my darling Vivian, who has her grandmother's eyes and her grandmother's spirit. May you always walk with your head high." Melissa borrowed it for a date. She accidentally left it in a cab. When I cried, actually sobbed over the loss of my grandmother's final gift, my mother slapped me across the face. "It's just a purse, Vivian. God, you're so dramatic. Melissa feels terrible." Melissa, I noticed, didn't feel terrible enough to stop going on expensive dates with the boy she was seeing. The boy who, I later learned, she'd told I was a psycho older sister who was jealous of her. That was the pattern for the next decade. I worked 2 jobs through college while Melissa coasted on our parents' money. I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in finance. They didn't come to my graduation because it conflicted with Melissa's sorority formal. I landed a prestigious internship at Goldman Sachs. Melissa told everyone at a family dinner that I'd only gotten it because I'd slept with the hiring manager. My father laughed. My mother told me I should be flattered that Melissa thought I was pretty enough to do such a thing. I stopped trying to defend myself. What was the point? When I was 25, I received my grandmother's inheritance, the one thing my parents couldn't touch because she'd set it up in an irrevocable trust that bypassed them entirely. It wasn't a fortune, but it was substantial, enough to put a down payment on a small apartment, to build a nest egg, to finally have something that was mine. I never saw a penny of it. My father was the trustee. He had to release the funds to me. He said he would right after Melissa's wedding. She was marrying a hedge fund manager's son, and the wedding was costing $300,000. They just needed a small loan to cover some unexpected expenses. Family helps family, right? I signed the papers he put in front of me. I trusted my father. The money went into an account I didn't have access to. When I asked about it, my father told me he'd invested it for me. "You'll thank me when you're older," he said. "You're too impulsive to handle this kind of money." I was working 70-hour weeks at a financial analysis firm. I had never made an impulsive purchase in my life. Meanwhile, Melissa posted Instagram photos of her honeymoon in Bora Bora, wearing a different designer outfit every day. I hired a lawyer with money I didn't have. The lawyer told me that technically, legally, my father had the right to invest the funds as he saw fit until I turned 30, and that fighting it would cost more than I could possibly afford. He also told me, off the record, that my family had a very expensive legal team on retainer, and they would bury me in motions and delays until I went bankrupt. I gave up. What choice did I have? At 26, I had a nervous breakdown at work. I was hospitalized for 3 days. My parents didn't visit. Melissa sent a text. Sorry you're going through this, but maybe try yoga. It really helps me stay centered. She'd sent it from her second honeymoon in Santorini. Her husband had cheated on her, and our parents had paid for a $50,000 healing vacation to help their marriage. I was fired 2 weeks after I returned to work. They cited performance issues, but I knew the truth. I'd missed too many days, and I was a liability. I couldn't fight it. I was too tired. For the next year, I bounced between tempos, jobs, and unemployment. I moved into a studio apartment in a terrible neighborhood. I sold everything I owned of value piece by piece just to make rent. My collection of designer bags, pieces I'd saved for years to buy, each one a small victory in a life that had none, went to consignment shops for a fraction of their worth. Melissa bought 3 of them. She didn't know they were mine. The consignment shop didn't give out seller information. But I knew. I saw them on her Instagram, mixed in with all her other bags, just more trophies in a collection she didn't even appreciate. The last bag I sold was a Hermes Kelly that I'd bought myself after landing a major client at my old job, back when I still had a career. I'd saved for 2 years for it. It was my pride and joy, my proof that I could have nice things, that I could achieve something. I sold it for $3,000 to cover 3 months of rent. It was worth $12,000. The consignment dealer knew it. I knew it, but I was desperate, and he knew that too. Melissa bought it the next day. Full price, of course. Our parents' money spent as easily as water. I saw her carrying it at a family brunch I'd been guilt-tripped into attending. "Oh, this old thing," she said when someone complimented it. "I have so many bags, I honestly can't even remember where I got half of them." I excused myself, went to the bathroom, and threw up. That was 18 months before I died. The final stretch was a blur of depression, debt, and alcohol. I stopped answering my phone. I stopped going to family events. I stopped trying. On my 28th birthday, I was alone in my apartment with a bottle of cheap vodka. My parents hadn't called. Melissa had posted a photo of a designer cake our parents had bought her for no particular reason, captioned, "Just because I'm their favorite, I don't remember deciding to drink the whole bottle." I don't remember much of anything after the first few shots. I just remember thinking over and over, it should have been different. It should have been better. This wasn't supposed to be my life. And then I was 10 years old again, gasping awake in my childhood bedroom, with my grandmother's Chanel 255 sitting on my desk, and the absolute certainty that I'd been given the rarest gift in the world, a second chance. The first thing I did was cry. I sobbed into my pillow for 20 minutes, overwhelmed by the sheer mercy of being alive again, of being young again, of having time. When I finally calmed down enough to think clearly, I took stock of my situation. I was 10 years old. My grandmother had given me the bag 2 days earlier. I could see the card still sitting on my desk. Melissa was 8. She hadn't borrowed the bag yet. That would happen in about 3 months when she wanted to impress some boy at a middle school dance. In my first life, I'd said yes. I'd let her borrow it, eager to be the good big sister, desperate for her approval. And when she lost it, I'd believed her tears, her apologies, her promises to replace it someday. Not this time. I got out of bed and picked up the Chanel bag, feeling its weight in my hands. It was beautiful, quilted black leather, the iconic chain strap, the turn-lock closure. My grandmother's hands had touched this. She'd carried it to luncheons and gallery openings, had probably held my infant father while wearing it on her shoulder. I opened my closet and moved aside a loose panel in the back wall, a hiding spot I'd discovered in my first life but never used for anything important. I placed the bag inside, wrapped carefully in its dust cover and original box, and sealed the panel back up. Then I went to find my grandmother. She was in the garden as she always was on Saturday mornings when she visited. She lived in a penthouse on the Upper East Side but spent weekends at our house in Westchester, mostly, I now understood, to see me. In my first life, I'd taken her presence for granted. In this life, I knew exactly how precious our time together was. She had less than 2 years left. "Vivian, darling," she said, smiling as I approached. She was 73, elegant in a cashmere twin set in pearls, her white hair perfectly coiffed. "You're up early for a Saturday." I sat down next to her on the bench and, without planning to, burst into tears again. Sweetheart, what's wrong? She pulled me close and I breathed in her perfume. Chanel No. 5, always. I just wanted to say thank you, I managed between sobs. For the bag and for everything. I love you so much, Grandma. She held me tighter. I love you too, darling. More than you know. We sat like that for a long time. And then, because I was 10 and she was the only person who had ever really loved me unconditionally, I told her everything. I didn't expect her to believe me. I thought she'd think I was having some kind of breakdown, that she'd tell my parents, that it would all go wrong immediately. But my grandmother had always been sharper than anyone gave her credit for. She listened to everything: the borrowed bag, the stolen boyfriends, the missing inheritance, the years of neglect and favoritism, my lonely death in a studio apartment. I told her things I shouldn't have known at 10, details about finances and legal structures and family dynamics that no child could understand. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Tell me something only we would know. Something from the future." I thought for a moment. "Next month, you're going to get a call from your friend Dorothy. She's going to invite you to Cabo San Lucas for her 75th birthday. You're going to say no because you hate flying. But if you go, you'll meet a widower named Arthur Chen, no relation to our family, and you're going to have coffee with him every morning for 6 days, and you're going to tell me he reminded you what it felt like to be young. You'll keep in touch with him for the rest of, your life, and when you die, his will be the last number dialed on your phone." My grandmother's hand went to her mouth. "How could you possibly? Because in my first life, you told me about him. It was one of the last conversations we had before you passed. You said you regretted not going to Cabo, not taking that chance, not allowing yourself one last adventure. You said you'd been so focused on being proper, on maintaining appearances, that you forgot to actually live." She stared at me for a long, long time. Then she said, "What do you need from me?" My grandmother was a strategist. She hadn't married into the Chen family by accident. She'd chosen my grandfather deliberately, had helped him build his business from nothing, had invested her own inheritance so wisely that when he died, she was wealthier than he'd ever been. She understood power, money, and the long game. We spent the next 2 years planning. The first thing we did was protect the inheritance. My grandmother couldn't cut my father out entirely without raising suspicion, but she could restructure. We worked with her personal lawyer, not the family lawyer, an important distinction, to create a new trust. My father would still be the trustee, but the terms were ironclad. The money had to be released to me in full on my 25th birthday, invested only in specific low-risk instruments, with quarterly statements sent to both me and an independent fiduciary. Any deviation would trigger an automatic audit and removal of my father as trustee. My father complained about the lack of trust, but he couldn't fight it without revealing his intentions. The papers were signed 6 months before my grandmother died. The second thing we did was document everything. My grandmother bought me a high-quality video camera, disguised as a gift to encourage my interest in filmmaking. I used it to record every family dinner, every interaction between my parents and me versus my parents and Melissa. The favoritism was stunning when you actually watched it back. Melissa praised for getting a B, me ignored for straight A's. Melissa comforted when she cried about a friend being mean, me told to stop being sensitive when I came home with bruises from where Melissa had pinched me. We saved everything to a hard drive that lived in my grandmother's safe deposit box. The third thing we did was build my future. My grandmother enrolled me in private investing classes, taught me everything she knew about money management, and opened a custodial investment account in my name that my parents didn't know about. Every birthday, every Christmas, she gave me savings bonds, really deposits into this account. By the time I turned 18, I had $100,000 that no one in my family could touch, and the fourth thing we did was prepare for her death. We knew it was coming. She'd died of a stroke in my first life when I was 12, and in this life, she refused aggressive medical intervention that might have bought her a few more years. "I'm 75, she said. "I've had a good life, but I'm going to make sure you have a good life too." She made recordings, Hours and hours of them, all saved to USB drives hidden in her lawyer's office. Some were practical advice about investing, about navigating society, about protecting myself. Some were just her talking, telling me stories about her life, her regrets, her hopes for me. "For when you miss me," she said, "which I hope you will." And then 3 weeks before she died, she gave me the final piece of the puzzle. "I've changed my will," she said. We were having tea in her penthouse, just the two of us. "Your father thinks he's inheriting my apartment and most of my liquid assets. He's wrong." She slid a folder across the table. Inside was a complete breakdown of her estate. The apartment was going to charity. Her jewelry was going to auction, with the proceeds funding a scholarship in her name. Her stock portfolio, worth approximately $4.2 million, was being placed in a trust that would release to me in stages: 1 million at 25, 1.5 million at 30, and the remainder at 35. My father was getting $500,000 and her car. Melissa was getting $100,000 to be held in trust until she turned 25. "He's going to contest it," I said. "Let him try. I've been evaluated by 3 separate doctors who will testify to my sound mental state. I've recorded a video explaining my reasoning, and I've made it very clear that if anyone contests, their inheritance is forfeit and goes to charity instead." "They're going to blame me." "Of course they will." She smiled, fierce and proud. "But you'll be ready." She died on a Tuesday morning, peacefully in her sleep. I was at school when it happened. My mother picked me up early, her eyes red from crying, though I noticed she'd still taken the time to fix her makeup. "Your grandmother has passed," she said stiffly. I cried real tears. I'd known it was coming, but it still hurt like a fresh wound. I'd lost her twice now. The will reading was a week later. I'd been coached on how to act: sad, quiet, respectful, not triumphant. Never triumphant, not yet. My father's face when the lawyer read the terms was almost worth the grief. Almost. "This is ridiculous," he said flatly. My mother was clearly not in her right mind. "I'm contesting this." The lawyer, Mr. Harrison, didn't even blink. "Mr. Chen, I anticipated this reaction. Please watch this." He turned on a television, and my grandmother appeared on the screen. "Jonathan," she said, looking directly at the camera, "if you're watching this, it means you're considering contesting my will. Don't." I was evaluated by Dr. Morrison, Dr. Chen, no relation, and Dr. Phillips. All 3 have signed affidavits confirming my mental competence. I've made these decisions with full knowledge and clear intent. She paused, and her expression hardened. "You've been a disappointment as a son, Jonathan. You married a woman I never liked. You've raised your daughters with a favoritism that turned my stomach. And you've shown more interest in my money than in my company for the last 20 years. I'm leaving Vivian the bulk of my estate because she is the only one who ever truly cared about me as a person rather than as a bank account. If you contest this will, you forfeit your $500,000, and it will go to the ASPCA instead. Your choice." The screen went black. My father was purple with rage. My mother looked like she'd been slapped. Melissa, 9 years old and not really understanding what was happening, was crying because everyone else was upset. "I understand this is difficult," Mr. Harrison said smoothly. "But the will is airtight. And frankly, Mr. Chen, you'd spend more fighting it than you'd ever recover. My advice is to accept the terms." My father accepted. He had no choice. But he never forgave me for it. None of them did. The next 13 years were a careful dance. I played the part they expected. The bookish older sister, the responsible one, the one who didn't make waves. I let Melissa have the spotlight. I let my parents fawn over her. I watched them spend money on her that should have been split equally, and I said nothing. But I was building, always building. I used my grandmother's money wisely. I invested in Apple in 2008 when everyone thought they were done for. I bought Amazon stock before anyone understood what Bezos was creating. I invested in cryptocurrency early, not all in, I wasn't reckless, but enough that when Bitcoin hit $60,000, my portfolio was worth 7 figures. I went to Columbia for undergrad, funded by my grandmother's first trust disbursement. I graduated top of my class. I got my MBA from Wharton. I worked at McKinsey, then Goldman Sachs. But this time I was strategic about it. I networked ruthlessly, I made myself indispensable, I built a reputation as someone who could not be pushed around. And I watched Melissa become exactly who she'd been in my first life: spoiled, entitled, cruel in casual ways that she didn't even recognize as cruelty. She went to a mediocre college on our parents' dime, partied through 4 years, graduated with a 2.7 GPA and a marketing degree she never used. She dated a string of wealthy men, each one more unsuitable than the last, each relationship ending in dramatic tears and expensive healing vacations funded by our parents. She borrowed my things constantly: clothes, shoes, jewelry, and yes, bags. I let her, most of the time. I'd learned to buy pieces I didn't care about, things I could afford to lose. The items I treasured, the ones that mattered, stayed locked in a climate controlled storage unit under a false name. And I waited. I waited for her to turn 25, to receive her own inheritance from our grandmother. I waited for her to burn through it in 18 months on a failed boutique PR agency that was really just an excuse to throw parties and call it networking. I waited for her to come crawling to our parents for more money and for them to give it to her, always. I waited for her to meet Marcus Ashford, the hedge fund manager's son who seemed perfect on paper but had a gambling addiction and a mean streak his family was very good at hiding. I waited for them to get engaged after 6 months, for our parents to throw her a $300,000 wedding, for me to be asked to be a bridesmaid despite the fact that Melissa and I barely spoke. And I waited for her to start asking to borrow my designer bags for all her society events, her charity galas, her ladies who lunch gatherings. Because that's when my plan truly began. Melissa asked to borrow my first bag 2 months before her wedding: a vintage Hermes Birkin in rouge casaque, crocodile skin, gold hardware. I'd bought it at auction for $45,000. It was an investment piece, the kind that appreciated in value every year. "Please, Viv," she said, using the nickname she only deployed when she wanted something. "I have this huge gala next week for Marcus's mother's charity, and I need to make a good impression. All the other wives will have Birkins. I can't show up with anything less." In my first life, this conversation had been about a different bag, but the pattern was the same: the wheedling tone, the implication that my saying no would be selfish, the casual certainty that I would give her what she wanted. "Of course," I said sweetly. When do you need it?" Her face lit up. "Really? Oh my God, Viv, you're the best. Can I grab it now?" "It's at my apartment. Come by tomorrow around 7?" She hugged me, and I forced myself not to stiffen. "Thank you so much. I'll take super good care of it, I promise." She didn't, of course. She never did. The bag came back 3 weeks later with a scratch on the hardware and a faint stain on the interior lining. Melissa didn't mention it, just left the bag with my doorman with a note: "Thanks, babes." I took photos of the damage. I had the bag professionally evaluated. The scratch reduced the value by $3,000. The stain was wine, and the leather specialist said it would cost $800 to restore properly. I sent Melissa an invoice. She called me laughing. "Is this a joke?" "No," I said calmly. "You damaged a $45,000 bag. I'm asking you to pay for the restoration." "Vivian, it's barely noticeable, and it's not like you can't afford it. That's not the point. You borrowed my property. You damaged it. You should pay for the repairs." "Oh my God, you're being so ridiculous. I'm not paying for this." "Then I won't be lending you anything else." She hung up on me. She complained to our parents, who called to tell me I was being petty and jealous of Melissa's upcoming wedding. I listened to their lecture, said, "Okay," and hung up, and I waited. 6 weeks later, Melissa called again. "Hey, Viv." Her voice was strained, trying for casual and missing. "So I know we had that thing with the Birkin, but I was wondering, could I maybe borrow your Chanel for the rehearsal dinner? The ivory quilted one?" "Did you pay the invoice for the Birkin repairs?" Silence. Then, "Come on, Vivian, don't be like this. This is my wedding. I just want to look nice." "Pay the invoice and you can borrow the Chanel." "I don't have $800 just lying around." I almost laughed. She'd just posted Instagram photos from a weekend trip to the Hamptons, but I kept my voice neutral. "Then I guess you'll need to use one of your own bags." She started crying. You're ruining my wedding. You're such a bitch, Vivian. I don't know why you hate me so much. I hung up. She didn't call back, but our mother did. Vivian Elizabeth Chen, you will lend your sister that bag, or so help me. Or what, Mom? I was 25 years old, financially independent, and so very, very tired of this script. You'll ground me? Cut me out of the will? Oh, wait, you can't. I already have my inheritance, and it's worth more than anything you'll ever leave me. The silence on the other end was deafening. Your grandmother poisoned you against this family, my mother said finally, her voice cold. No, I said. She was the only one who ever actually loved me. The rest of you just tolerated me when I was useful. I hung up. I blocked my mother's number for a week until I knew the rehearsal dinner had passed and Melissa had been forced to use her own bag. A perfectly nice Gucci that our parents had bought her, but not the Chanel she'd wanted. The wedding came and went. I attended, played my role as bridesmaid, smiled for photos. Melissa didn't speak to me beyond what was absolutely necessary. Our parents were icily polite. I didn't care. I was playing a longer game. Over the next 3 years, the pattern repeated with variations. Melissa would ask to borrow bags. Sometimes I said yes, sometimes no, depending on my mood and my calculations. When I said yes, the bags always came back damaged, scratches, stains, broken clasps. I documented everything. I sent invoices. She never paid. Our parents funded her lifestyle while her marriage slowly crumbled. Marcus's gambling got worse. They fought constantly. Melissa started showing up to family dinners with bruises she blamed on being clumsy. In my first life, I'd tried to help her. I'd offered her my couch, my support, advice on divorce lawyers. She'd thrown it back in my face, accused me of being jealous that she'd found love and I hadn't. In this life, I said nothing. I watched, I documented, and I waited for the final piece to fall into place. It happened 6 months ago. Melissa and Marcus's divorce was finalized. She got a decent settlement, $2 million, the apartment, some stocks. It should have been enough to live on comfortably for years if she was smart about it. She wasn't smart about it. She went on a spending spree. New wardrobe, new car, a vacation to Dubai. She started a lifestyle, blog called Thriving After Divorce, and spent thousands on a professional photographer to follow her around taking candid shots of her journey to self-love. And she started a designer bag collection. She bought dozens of them. Birkins, Kellys, Chanel Classics, limited edition Dior's. She posted photos of her closet, bags arranged by color with captions like, investing in myself and the best revenge is success. She spent $400,000 on bags in 3 months. I watched the Instagram posts, the YouTube videos, the blog entries, and I waited for the call I knew was coming. It came on a Tuesday. Viv, it's me. Melissa's voice was small, scared. Not the bratty whine of my childhood, not the entitled demand of her 20s. Actually frightened. What's wrong? I fucked up. I fucked up really bad. She was crying. I spent too much money, way too much. And I thought I could just, I don't know, I thought I'd figure it out, but now my financial advisor is saying I'm basically broke. And I have all these bags, and I don't know what to do. How broke? Like, I have maybe $50,000 left, total. And my rent is $8,000 a month. And I have credit card debt, and she broke down completely. In my first life, I would have felt sorry for her. I would have offered to help, to give her money, to fix her problems. In this life, I said, Melissa, I'm sorry you're going through this, but I don't understand why you're calling me. I thought, could I maybe borrow some money just until I figure things out? No. Please, Vivian, I'm desperate. You've never paid back a single invoice I sent you for damaged bags. Why would I trust you with actual money? Those were different. This is serious. They were all serious. You just didn't think my things mattered. Please, she whispered. Please, I'm begging you. I don't know what else to do. I closed my eyes. This was the moment. This was where it all began. Sell the bags, I said. What? You spent $400,000 on designer bags. Sell them. That's what they're for. They're investments, remember? That's what you told everyone. But I can't just sell them. They're mine. I earned them. With your divorce settlement? With our parents' money that funded your entire life? Melissa, you've never earned anything. She hung up on me. 2 days later, I got a call from my mother. Your sister needs help and you're going to give it to her. No, I'm not. Vivian, she's family, but to me, she's an adult who made terrible financial decisions. I'm not bailing her out. If you don't help her, she'll lose her apartment. Then she should move somewhere cheaper. How can you be so cold? What happened to you? I laughed. I actually laughed. You did, Mom. You and Dad and Melissa. You happened to me for 18 years. And you know what? I'm done. I'm completely done with all of you. I hung up. I blocked my mother's number. I blocked my father's. I blocked Melissa's. And then I made a call of my own. The Metropolitan Museum of Art holds an annual gala every spring. It's the fashion event of the season. Celebrities, designers, society matrons all gathered to celebrate the new exhibit and show off their couture. Tickets are $35,000 each, and they're nearly impossible to get without serious connections. I'd been attending for 3 years. I'd networked extensively. I was on the junior committee, and this year, I'd been asked to help organize the charity auction that preceded the main event. It was perfect. I spent 3 months setting up my plan. I contacted every major consignment shop in Manhattan, every auction house, every dealer I'd ever worked with. I told them I was downsizing my collection, that I was pivoting to a more minimalist lifestyle, very on trend for the upcoming season, and then I sold every designer bag I owned. Not at a loss, I'd bought wisely, and the market had appreciated. My collection was worth approximately $800,000. I sold every piece for fair market value, took the cash, and immediately donated all $800,000 to the Metropolitan Museum of Art's Fashion Conservation Fund. The press release went out 2 weeks before the gala. Vivian Chen, prominent investor and philanthropist, has made a historic donation to the Met's fashion conservation efforts, including the liquidation of her entire designer handbag collection. These pieces should be preserved as art and history, Chen stated, not gathering dust in my closet. The fashion blogs picked it up. Vogue ran a piece. The New York Times did a profile on me for their style section, complete with photos of my now empty closet and quotes about meaningful philanthropy versus performative consumption. I was praised as a visionary, a woman who understood that true luxury was in preservation and sharing, not in hoarding. And Melissa, who'd been trying frantically to sell her own bags to pay her bills, suddenly found that the market was comparing her to me. Every dealer, every consignment shop had the same response. Oh, are you following Vivian Chen's lead? How admirable! Except Melissa wasn't donating her bags to charity. She was desperately trying to liquidate them for cash. And the optics were bad. The blogs that had praised my donation started running pieces about the right and wrong way to part with luxury goods. Melissa's Instagram was flooded with comments asking why she was selling instead of donating, calling her materialistic, accusing her of never actually caring about the investment aspect of her collection. She tried to explain, posted a long, rambling Instagram story about financial hardship and making tough choices, but it only made things worse. Because how could she claim financial hardship when she'd just spent $400,000 on bags a few months earlier? It looked like irresponsibility at best, like a grift at worst. Her bags stopped selling. The few she did manage to move went for 40–55% of what she'd paid because the market was flooded and she was desperate and everyone knew it. I watched it all unfold from my emptied apartment, and I felt nothing but satisfaction. But that was just the opening move. The gala was on a Saturday in May. I wore a custom Dior gown, navy silk with hand-embroidered stars, elegant and understated. I'd learned from my grandmother that true wealth whispers, only the insecure shout. I arrived early for the auction preview. The items were spectacular. Vintage couture, rare accessories, pieces from private collections that hadn't been seen in decades. and at the center of the display was a collection of my donated bags, arranged artfully with plaques explaining their provenance and significance. My grandmother's Chanel 255 was there. I'd finally brought it out of hiding, had it authenticated and appraised, and donated it as the crown jewel of my collection. The placard read, Chanel 255 circa 1980s from the personal collection of Margaret Chen, donated by her granddaughter Vivian Chen in loving memory. I stood in front of it for a long moment, remembering my grandmother's hands, her smile, her fierce love. I did it, Grandma, I whispered. I won. Vivian! I turned to see Caroline Ashford, Marcus's mother, approaching. We'd become friendly over the past year. She'd quietly supported Melissa's divorce, had been appalled by her son's behavior, and had taken me under her wing as a sort of apology for her family's failures. Caroline, you look stunning. As do you, darling. I wanted to talk to you about something. She glanced around, then lowered her voice. I received a rather disturbing call this morning. From your sister. My heart rate picked up, but I kept my face neutral. Oh? She wanted to buy a ticket to tonight's gala. Said she was a major donor and should be allowed to purchase one even though they're sold out. Caroline's expression was carefully blank. I checked with the development office. She's never donated a penny to the Met, not even for membership. I see. She also mentioned something about how you'd stolen her idea to donate bags. I'm afraid I didn't quite understand her point. I sighed. Melissa is going through a difficult time financially. I think she's lashing out because she made some poor decisions and is looking for someone to blame. Well, she called me a classist bitch when I told her there were no tickets available, so I'm afraid she's burned that bridge. Caroline patted my arm. I just wanted you to know in case she tries to cause trouble tonight. Thank you for the warning. She left and I checked my phone. 7 missed calls from Melissa, 3 from my mother. I deleted the voicemails without listening to them. The gala began at 8. By 8:30, the museum was packed with Manhattan's elite, everyone in their finest gowns and jewels, champagne flowing freely. The auction was scheduled for 9, and I was backstage helping coordinate the items with the auctioneer when security radioed in. We have a situation at the east entrance. A woman claiming to be Vivian Chen's sister, demanding to be let in. She doesn't have a ticket. I closed my eyes. Of course she did. I'll handle it, I told the security coordinator. Give me 5 minutes. I found Melissa at the east entrance arguing with 2 security guards. She was wearing a dress I recognized, a red Valentino that I'd worn to a gala 2 years ago. She must have borrowed it and never returned it, and I'd been so busy I hadn't even noticed. It looked terrible on her. She'd gained weight since the divorce, stress eating probably, and the dress was too tight in all the wrong places. Her makeup was overdone, her hair frizzy from the humidity. She looked desperate and ridiculous, and I felt a sharp pang of something that might have been pity in another life. In this life, I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Melissa, I said calmly, Asia, you need to leave. She spun to face me, her eyes wild. You did this. You ruined everything. You donated your bags just to make me look bad. I donated my bags because I wanted to support fashion conservation. Your financial problems have nothing to do with me. Bullshit. You knew I was trying to sell mine. You knew it would tank the market. The market doesn't revolve around you, Melissa, and my charitable giving certainly doesn't. You're such a fucking liar. She lunged at me, and the security guards grabbed her arms. You've always been jealous of me. You've always hated that Mom and Dad loved me more. People were starting to stare. I saw phones coming out, cameras turning our direction. Perfect. Melissa, you're making a scene. Please leave before this gets worse. Worse? Worse? She was screaming now, thrashing against the guards. You took everything from me. Grandma's money, your stupid bags. You even took my wedding and made it about you by being such a bitch about lending me things. And now you're here in your fancy dress at your fancy party, and I have nothing. You have exactly what you earned, I said quietly. Nothing. She spat at me, actually spat. though the guards pulled her back before it could land. "That's assault," I said to the security guards. "Please call the police." "No," Melissa screamed. "No, you can't. I'm her sister. Vivian, please." I turned away and walked back into the gala, my head high, my hands steady. Behind me, I heard Melissa's screams fade as security escorted her out. I made it to the bathroom before I started shaking. Not from fear, not from guilt, from sheer, overwhelming relief. It was done. The final confrontation, the one I'd been building toward for 15 years, was finished. I looked at myself in the mirror. My makeup was perfect. My dress was immaculate. I looked like everything Melissa had always wanted to be. Elegant, composed, successful, untouchable. I looked like my grandmother. I smiled. The police did. "Come." Melissa was arrested for trespassing, disorderly conduct, and attempted assault. It made the society pages, not the front page, but enough that everyone who mattered saw it. The photos of her being escorted out in handcuffs, screaming, wearing my dress, were everywhere by morning. But that wasn't the worst part for her. The worst part came 2 days later when her financial situation became public knowledge. It turned out that in her desperation, Melissa had done something spectacularly stupid. She'd forged donation receipts to claim tax deductions for charitable contributions she'd never actually made. Specifically, she'd claimed to have donated $200,000 worth of designer bags to various charities, using fake receipts with forged signatures from nonprofit directors. She'd used these fake deductions to avoid paying taxes on her divorce settlement. The IRS found out because one of those charities was the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and after the gala incident, someone in their development office decided to check whether Melissa Chen had actually made the donations she'd claimed. She hadn't. Federal tax fraud is not a crime you can charm your way out of. It's not something our parents' money could fix, especially since the amount involved crossed the felony threshold. Melissa was charged. Our parents hired expensive lawyers, but the evidence was damning. The forged receipts, the fraudulent tax returns, the documentation of her actual financial transactions showing that the bags had been sold to consignment shops, not donated to charity. She took a plea deal: 3 years in federal prison, $500,000 in fines and restitution, 5 years of probation after release. Our parents mortgaged their house to pay the fines. They blamed me, of course. Told everyone who would listen that I'd orchestrated the whole thing, that I'd gotten Melissa arrested out of spite. They weren't entirely wrong. I had orchestrated it, or at least I'd created the conditions that made Melissa's downfall inevitable. I'd donated my bags publicly, making her look bad when she tried to sell hers. I'd ensured that her presence at the gala would be documented, that her breakdown would be witnessed and recorded. And I'd made one anonymous call to the IRS, suggesting they might want to check Melissa Chen's charitable donation claims against actual charity records. But I hadn't forged those receipts. I hadn't committed tax fraud. I hadn't made Melissa into a criminal. She'd done that herself, out of desperation and entitlement, and the absolute certainty that she deserved things she hadn't earned. I just made sure she got caught. The trial was 6 months ago. I didn't attend, there was no need, and my presence would have been inflammatory. But I followed the coverage, watched my sister cry on the stand, heard her lawyer argue that she'd made a mistake in a moment of financial panic. The judge wasn't sympathetic. "Ms. Chen," he said at sentencing, "you had resources most people can only dream of. A divorce settlement in the millions, parents willing to support you, a sister who, by all accounts, would have helped you if you'd asked honestly. Instead, you chose to defraud the federal government. The court is not inclined toward leniency." 3 years. She's currently in a minimum security facility in Connecticut. Our parents visit her weekly. I haven't spoken to any of them since the arrest. I did, however, speak at the sentencing. Victim impact statement, they called it, though I wasn't technically a victim of her tax fraud. But the prosecutor wanted me there, wanted the contrast, the successful philanthropic sister versus the criminal one. I kept it brief. Melissa and I grew up in the same house with the same parents, with many of the same advantages. The difference is that I was taught by my grandmother that wealth is a responsibility, not a right. That things given to us should be cherished and preserved, not consumed and discarded. My sister never learned that lesson. I hope she has the opportunity to learn it now. The courtroom was silent. Melissa was crying. My mother looked like she wanted to kill me. I walked out with my head high. That was 6 months ago. Today, I'm sitting in my new apartment, a penthouse on the Upper East Side, 3 blocks from where my grandmother used to live. I bought it with my inheritance, my investments, my own earned money. Every piece of furniture, every painting, every carefully chosen object is mine, paid for with my own work. I have no designer bags. I donated them all, and I haven't bought any new ones. I don't need them anymore. They were only ever a symbol, and the battle they represented is over. I won. My grandmother's recordings are playing softly in the background. Today's is one from near the end, her voice a little weaker but still sharp. Remember, darling, she says, the best revenge isn't hurting them. It's becoming so thoroughly, completely happy that their opinion of you becomes irrelevant. Build a life so beautiful that their presence in it would only diminish it. I look around my apartment, at the life I've built from the ashes of my first chance and the careful planning of my second. I have a career I love. I left Goldman Sachs last year to start my own investment firm, specializing in women-owned businesses. I have friends who actually care about me, not what I can give them. I have a partner, a kind, brilliant woman I met at a charity function who knows my whole story and loves me anyway. I have peace. My phone rings. Unknown number. I almost don't answer, but something makes me pick up. Vivian Chen? Speaking. This is Susan Morrison from Bedford Women's Correctional Facility. Your sister, Melissa Chen, would like to add you to her approved visitor list. Would you be willing to— No, I say firmly, I would not. She asked me to tell you she's sorry, that she's had a lot of time to think, and she understands now what she did to you. She'd like a chance to apologize in person. I close my eyes. In my first life, I would have said yes. I would have visited, would have listened to her apology, would have probably forgiven her because that's what family does, right? In this life, I know better. Please tell Melissa that I appreciate the sentiment, but I'm not interested in a relationship with her. I wish her well in her rehabilitation, but I've moved on. I hang up before the woman can respond. There's a knock at my door. I check the camera. It's my partner, Aisha, carrying takeout bags and wine. I open the door and she kisses me, her arms full of dinner. Rough day? She asks, seeing my expression. Melissa wanted me to visit her in prison. And you said? No. She sets down the food and pulls me into a hug. Good. You don't owe her forgiveness. I know. And I do know, finally, after all these years and 2 lifetimes. I don't owe Melissa anything. Not my bags, not my money, not my time, not my forgiveness. We eat dinner on the balcony, watching the sunset over Manhattan. Aisha tells me about her day. She's a civil rights attorney, currently working on a case involving housing discrimination. I tell her about mine. We're close to finalizing a major investment in a women's tech collective. We're both building things, creating value, making the world incrementally better. At 10, my phone buzzes with an Instagram notification. I almost ignore it, but Aisha's already looking at her own phone and laughing. You have to see this, she says, turning her screen toward me. It's a post from a fashion blogger I follow. The caption reads, "Throwback to when Vivian Chen literally changed the conversation around designer bags and made meaningful philanthropy cool again. Still thinking about that Met donation. Icon behavior." The post has 50,000 likes. I smile and put my phone away. Come on, I say to Aisha. Let's go to bed. We clean up dinner, turn off the lights, and head to the bedroom. Through the window, I can see the lights of the city. Millions of people living their lives, chasing their dreams, fighting their battles. I fought mine. I won. And unlike my first life, where I died alone and forgotten in a studio apartment, choking on my own despair, in this life, I get to fall asleep next to someone I love, in a home I earned, with a future that's entirely mine. My grandmother was right. The best revenge is a life so beautiful that their presence would only diminish it. I built that life, and I will never, ever let anyone take it from me again. 3 years later, on a bright autumn morning, I receive an email from Bedford Correctional. Melissa has been released early for good behavior. She's moved back in with our parents, is working as a receptionist at a dental office, is on probation for 2 more years. The email includes a letter she's written to me. I delete it without reading it. Afternoon, I have a meeting at the Museum of Natural History. They're creating a new exhibit on sustainable fashion. And they've asked me to serve on the advisory board. The position is unpaid but prestigious, and it aligns perfectly with my values. I accept. As I'm leaving the museum, I see a woman across the street who looks like Melissa. Same build, same hair color. But when she turns, it's a stranger. I realize I don't even remember exactly what Melissa looks like anymore. She's become irrelevant to my life, a minor character in a story that's no longer about her. I walk to my car, an understated Mercedes, practical and elegant, and drive home to my penthouse where Aisha is cooking dinner and our cat is probably destroying something. I walk into warmth and light and love, and I think, this. This is what winning looks like. Not the courtroom, not the arrest, not the public humiliation. This. A life so full that there's no room for old resentments. A future so bright that the past can't cast shadows on it. I won my revenge the day I stopped needing it, but I earned my victory the day I built something beautiful in its place. And that, more than anything Melissa lost or suffered, is the truest justice of all.